Snow was falling thick and lazy, as if the entire forest had decided to fall asleep before midnight. My cabin stood alone among the Montana pines, small, warm, smelling of cinnamon and the smoke from the fireplace. I loved this silence, loved the way the wind sang through the trees and frost painted delicate patterns on the window glass. I sat on the rug wrapped in a heavy blanket, listening to the crackling fire. A mug of honey tea was cooling on the table. My phone hadn't rung in a week, and the absence of sound was the most precious gift I had given myself that night. This was my first peaceful Christmas since losing my mother, since leaving the city that had taken everything from me. But at exactly 11:58 p.m., the silence split apart. At first I thought it was the wind hitting the door, but the knock came again, hesitant, trembling, as if the hand knocking was about to weaken and fall into the snow. I stood up slowly. My heart tightened. No one ever showed up here unannounced. Never. A third knock, even weaker, almost collapsing. I approached the door, my palm feeling the cold through the wood, and holding my breath, I unlocked it. The door swung open under the weight of a body that had leaned against it. A man stood on my doorstep, covered in snow, lips cracked, breath coming out in short, painful bursts of steam. Tall, broad-shouldered, exhausted, with a cut along his cheekbone. His dark, desperate eyes were fixed on me, but in the next heartbeat, I noticed what he was holding. An infant. Tiny. Wrapped in a dark wool blanket, its nose red from the cold, letting out a faint whimper. "Please." The man's voice broke as if frozen. "Help us." I felt the ground slip from beneath my feet. I brought him inside, slamming the door shut as if trying to keep out not shadows, but living threats. He stood there, leaning heavily against the wall, snow melting on his face and turning into thin, transparent streaks. The infant whimpered softly, and I immediately covered the baby with a thick blanket, as if trying to shield the child from the whole world with one gesture. "Sit," I said quietly, guiding him toward the chair by the fireplace. The fire brushed his face with warm light, and I finally saw the details. A split lip, fresh scrapes on his palms, a torn collar, raw, bruised knuckles. He looked like someone the world had spent the entire night trying to take something precious from. I handed him a mug of hot tea, and he took it with trembling fingers. For a minute we were silent. Only the fire crackled, and somewhere in the forest the wind howled. The baby stirred in his arms, and he adjusted the blanket with a tenderness that seemed impossible coming from hands that looked like they'd seen violence. "I'm Florentina," I said softly, kneeling beside him. "Let me check the baby." He hesitated just for a moment, then gently placed the infant into my arms. The baby was warm, breathing softly, alive, safe, for now. I looked up at the man. "What's your name?" He closed his eyes briefly, as if the question itself carried weight. When he opened them again, I saw something in his gaze that made my breath catch. Not just exhaustion, not just fear, resignation. "Mario," he said quietly. "Mario Barella." The name fell into the silence like steel chain links. My hands froze on the baby's blanket. My stomach twisted. Mario Barella. Not a myth. Not a rumor whispered in back rooms and dark alleys. But the ruthless, untouchable head of the Barella crime syndicate, a man feared in 7 states. A man whose name alone could end lives. And he was in my home, bleeding and broken, holding a baby. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. And I realized with absolute certainty that the peaceful Christmas Eve I'd wanted, the silence, the solitude, the safety had just shattered completely. Because when a man like Mario Barella knocks on your door in the middle of the night holding an infant, it means only one thing: death is close behind. I recognized the name instantly. Everyone did. You didn't live in this part of the country without hearing whispers about the Barella syndicate, the empire that stretched across 7 states, built on blood, fear, and silence. They controlled everything that moved in the shadows: gambling, trafficking, protection rackets that weren't protection at all. And Mario Barella sat in my cabin, holding a baby. I forced my hands to steady as I checked the infant again. Warm skin, steady breathing, exhausted but unharmed. The baby's tiny fist curled around my finger, and something in my chest tightened painfully. "He's okay," I whispered, more to myself than to Mario. "Thanks to you," Mario said, his voice rough. I shifted my attention to him. The cut on his cheekbone was deep but clean. His knuckles were torn open, bruised purple and black. I grabbed my first aid kit from beneath the sink and returned, kneeling in front of him. "Hold still," I said, dabbing antiseptic on the wound. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, as if pain was something he'd learned to ignore a long time ago. "You know who I am," he said. Not a question. "Yes. Then you know what kind of danger I've brought to your door." I pressed gauze against his cheekbone, my fingers trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "I figured that out the moment you said your name." He watched me with those dark, calculating eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine. But beneath the hardness, there was something else. Something raw. Fear. "Who are you running from?" I asked quietly. "Rivals? The FBI?" His jaw tightened. "Worse." I paused, holding the gauze. "What's worse than that?" "Family." The word dropped between us like a stone into still water. Mario shifted the baby carefully in his arms, making sure the blanket covered the tiny ears, as if he could shield his son from the truth with wool and warmth. "My brother," he said finally. "Angelo Barella." I'd heard that name too. Angelo, the underboss, the enforcer, the one who handled the syndicate's ugliest business while Mario ran the empire from behind closed doors. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would your own brother?" "Because of him." Mario looked down at the baby, his expression shifting into something I didn't expect from a man like him. Love. Pure. Desperate. Terrified love. "The moment Chanso was born," Mario continued, "he became a threat to Angelo's claim. My brother has been waiting for years to take control. He's built alliances, made promises, and a legitimate heir." He exhaled slowly. "A legitimate heir ruins everything for him." My stomach dropped. "So he wants the baby dead." "Not just wants." Mario's voice turned cold. "He's already tried." I sat back on my heels, the full weight of it crashing over me. This wasn't about territory or money or power struggles between crime families. This was about a newborn baby whose only crime was being born. "I tried to leave tonight," Mario said. "Took the back roads, stayed off the main highways. But they found me anyway." His hands tightened slightly around his son. "They forced my car off the road about 10 miles from here. I kept control long enough to crash into a snowbank instead of a tree. But," he trailed off, his gaze distant. "You ran," I finished. "I ran. Through the forest. In the dark. My son in my arms, and my brother's men hunting us like animals." He looked at me then, and I saw something crack in his expression. "I saw your light through the trees and thought, maybe it was a sign. Maybe we had one chance left." The fire popped. Wind rattled the windows, and I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. I should have been terrified. I should have thrown them out, locked the door, called the police, but I didn't. Instead, I looked Mario Barella in the eye and asked the only question that mattered. "Are they close?" His answer was immediate. Certain. Devastating. "Yes." His voice was quiet, controlled, but beneath it I heard the truth he didn't want to say. "And they won't stop until we're dead." I stood up, the words still hanging in the air between us like smoke. My mind was racing, calculating, refusing to let fear paralyze me. "I need to see where you came from," I said, already moving toward the coat rack. Mario straightened immediately. "What? No. We can't just sit here blind." I grabbed my jacket, zipping it up with sharp, decisive movements. "If your brother's men are tracking you, I need to know how close they are. That's too dangerous." His voice carried the weight of command, the tone of a man used to being obeyed without question. I turned to face him, meeting his eyes without flinching. "More dangerous is not knowing what's coming." He stared at me, something flickering across his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect, but he said nothing. I switched on the flashlight, opened the door, and stepped into the night. The cold hit me like a physical force. Snow fell softly, muffling every sound, turning the world into something dreamlike and dangerous all at once. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness in pale yellow slices, and the forest seemed to shift around me, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. I followed the direction Mario had come from, my boots sinking deep into the snow. Within minutes, I found his tracks large, uneven, the prints of someone moving with difficulty. At one point he'd fallen, judging by the imprint of a knee and scattered snow. My chest tightened. He'd been carrying the baby through this. I moved faster, pushing through the cold and the dark. The forest changed its breathing with every step, quieter, denser, more oppressive. And then I saw it. The car. Its front was buried deep in a snowbank, the hood crumpled like paper. The windshield was cracked like thin ice on a frozen lake. The driver's door hung open, swaying slightly in the wind. I approached slowly, shining the flashlight over the wreckage. In the snow nearby, the imprint of someone falling Mario's. Clearly, the same pattern as before. But then I circled the vehicle, and my blood went cold. On the other side, the snow was disturbed differently. Clear imprints of heavy boots. 2 sets. Wide stride. Confident. Evenly paced. These weren't panicked. These weren't random. These were the tracks of hunters. I crouched, illuminating the prints more closely. The snow at the edges wasn't compacted by time, it was loose. Fresh. They had passed here recently. Very recently. I traced the direction with my flashlight beam, my hand trembling now despite the gloves. The tracks didn't wander, they didn't circle. They moved in a straight, deliberate line parallel to the route Mario had taken to my cabin. Only 50 meters separated their path from his. Just a thin stretch of branches and snow. I raised the flashlight higher, examining the prints more carefully. They weren't searching blindly. They were tracking with precision and purpose. My breath caught. If they shifted their direction by just a little, they would cross Mario's trail. Another 20 meters and they'd spot the path. Another 30 and they'd see the smoke rising from my chimney. Another 50 and they'd see the warm light glowing through my windows. They were minutes away. Minutes. I spun around, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The way back to the cabin suddenly felt impossibly long. Every shadow became a threat. Every sound of wind through branches became footsteps. I walked quickly but didn't run. Running made noise. Running drew attention. The cabin appeared between the tree trunks suddenly, like an island of light in an ocean of darkness. Through the window, I could see Mario's silhouette. He was standing, holding Chanso close, watching the forest like he expected death to walk out of it. I pushed through the door, and Mario turned toward me instantly. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. I pulled off my gloves, my fingers numb. My breath came out in short, visible bursts. "The car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's there, just like you said." "But," I stopped, swallowing hard. "But what?" Mario's eyes locked onto mine. I looked at him, at this dangerous man holding his innocent son, and told him the truth. "There are tracks," I whispered. 2 men. Fresh. "They're not searching randomly, Mario." His jaw tightened. "They're tracking you with precision," I continued, my voice barely above a breath. "And they're close." I paused, letting the weight of it settle. Too close. Mario didn't curse, didn't panic, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he became completely still, the kind of stillness that belonged to predators, not prey. His eyes went cold, calculating, and in that moment I saw exactly who Mario Barella really was beneath the exhaustion and the fatherly tenderness. A man raised in violence, trained by it, shaped by it. He sat down slowly in the chair, adjusting Chanso against his chest with practiced care, and when he spoke, his voice was terrifyingly calm. "If they find this place," he said quietly, "they will kill you without hesitation. No questions, no mercy. You're a witness now, Florentina. That makes you a liability." He looked up at me, and I saw something I didn't expect. Guilt. "I'm sorry I brought this to your door," he continued. "But you need to understand what's coming. These aren't men who negotiate. They're eliminators." I should have been terrified. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to throw them out, to save myself, to call someone, anyone, for help. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to the closet and pulled out my emergency pack. My hands moved quickly, precisely, with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of nursing, from knowing that hesitation costs lives. Thermal blankets, first aid kit, flashlight, extra batteries, water bottles, energy bars, spare fuel canister. Each item landed in the bag with a soft thud. Mario watched me, his expression shifting from guilt to something else entirely. Shock. "What are you doing?" he asked. "What does it look like?" I zipped the pack closed and grabbed my heaviest coat. "We're not waiting for them to knock on the door. Florentina, don't." I turned to face him, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "Don't tell me to stay behind. Don't tell me it's too dangerous. I already know." He stared at me, silent, as if I'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. You came to my door holding a baby, I said quietly, on Christmas Eve, in a snowstorm, running from your own brother, and you think I'm going to let you walk back out there alone? Something cracked in his expression, something deep and fragile that he'd been holding together through sheer force of will. You don't know me, he said, his voice rough. You don't owe me anything. No, I agreed. I don't. I slung the pack over my shoulder and met his eyes. But I'm not the kind of person who turns away a man holding a baby, even if that man is Mario Barella. For a long moment, he just looked at me. And in that look, I saw something shift, something that went beyond gratitude or relief. Hope. Raw, desperate, fragile hope that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. You're not afraid, he said softly. It wasn't a question. I'm terrified, I admitted. But fear's useless, unless it moves us. His eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since he'd collapsed against my door, Mario Barella smiled. It was brief, almost invisible, but it was real. Let's move, I said. We stepped outside into the cold. The snowmobile waited beneath the shed roof, covered with an old tarp. I yanked it off, the fabric heavy with ice and snow, and checked the fuel gauge. 3/4 full. Enough. I crouched, checking the levers and controls, my breath coming out in short white clouds. Mario stood beside me, Chanso secured against his chest with the carrier straps wrapped in layers of blankets. You know how to drive this? He asked. Better than you do, I said, starting the engine. It growled to life, loud and powerful, cutting through the silence like a blade. I climbed onto the seat, gripping the handlebars. Mario hesitated for only a second before settling in behind me, his body pressed close, solid, warm, protective. One arm wrapped carefully around my waist, while the other cradled his son. The contact sent electricity through me despite everything, despite the danger, despite the cold, despite the impossibility of the situation. Hold on, I said. The snowmobile lurched forward, and we plunged into the darkness of the forest. Wind lashed at our faces. Snow swirled around us in a white storm. The trees blurred into dark shapes as we cut through the night, moving fast, moving desperately. And then, so close to my ear, I felt his breath warm against my frozen skin. Mario whispered, I'm only alive right now because of you. The world became nothing but speed and cold and darkness. I gripped the handlebars tighter, leaning into each turn as the snowmobile cut through the forest. The headlight beam bounced wildly, illuminating snow-covered pines and frozen earth in frantic flashes. Wind tore at my face, my eyes watering from the cold and speed. Behind me, Mario's arm remained steady around my waist, not grabbing, not controlling, just there, present, protective. His other arm cradled Chanso against his chest, creating a small cocoon of warmth and safety for his son even as we flew through the night. I knew these woods. Every dip, every hidden root, every frozen creek bed. My hands moved instinctively, adjusting our path without conscious thought, and I felt Mario shift with each movement, balancing perfectly, trusting my choices without question. Far beyond the hills, a firework burst across the sky, red, then gold, painting the low clouds with color. Another followed, then another. Somewhere in the distance, people were celebrating, counting down to midnight, welcoming Christmas into the new day with champagne and laughter and warmth. And here we were, racing through frozen darkness with death somewhere behind us. Left! I shouted over the engine, and Mario leaned with me as we banked hard around a massive pine. His breath was warm against the back of my neck, despite the cold. His presence behind me felt like an anchor, solid, real, alive. Florentina, he said suddenly, his voice close to my ear, barely audible over the wind and engine. What? I called back. When I saw your cabin light through the trees. He paused, and I felt something shift in his posture. I thought it was the last good thing I'd ever see. My chest tightened. I didn't respond, couldn't respond, but my hands steadied on the handlebars. I was ready to die out there, he continued, his confession raw and quiet. But then you opened the door. I swallowed hard, focusing on the path ahead even as his words wrapped around something vulnerable inside me. Then fight to stay alive, I said firmly. For him, for Chanso. I felt Mario's arm tighten slightly around my waist, not fear, but something else. Something like determination renewed. For him, he echoed. Then softer. And for you. Another firework exploded overhead green this time, scattering like falling stars. The forest began to thin. Through the trees ahead, I spotted the warm glow of lights, steady, reliable, safe. Clayton's Ranger Lodge. I eased off the throttle, letting the snowmobile slow as we approached. The building was small, but solid. Smoke rising from the chimney, windows glowing amber. Clayton's truck sat covered in snow beside the porch. I killed the engine, and the sudden silence felt almost violent. After the roar of our escape, we climbed off carefully. Mario moved stiffly, his muscles locked from cold and tension and holding his son so tightly for so long. I grabbed the emergency pack and led him toward the door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Mr. Clayton stood in the doorway, 65, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades in the wilderness. His eyes took in the scene instantly. Me, breathless and wild-eyed. Mario, bleeding and holding a bundled infant. The snowmobile behind us with steam rising from its overworked engine. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. Inside, he said simply. Stepping aside, the warmth hit us like a wall. I guided Mario to the couch near the fireplace, while Clayton locked the door behind us and pulled the curtains closed with practiced efficiency. Coffee's hot, Clayton said, moving toward the kitchen. I'll bring blankets. Mario sat heavily, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Chanso stirred against his chest, letting out a soft whimper. Let me, I said quietly, reaching for the baby. Mario hesitated just for a heartbeat, then carefully transferred his son into my arms. The baby was so small, so warm, so impossibly vulnerable. I adjusted the blankets, checking Chanso's temperature, his breathing, the color of his skin. Everything seemed okay. Exhausted, cold, but okay. When I looked up, Mario was watching me, not the baby. Me. His dark eyes held something I couldn't quite name, something raw and unguarded that he probably didn't even realize was showing. Something that looked like trust and longing and fear all wrapped together. And in that moment, sitting in a stranger's cabin with a mafia boss's child in my arms and death somewhere behind us in the forest, something shifted, not just in the room. Inside him. I saw it happen, watched something crack open in Mario Barella's carefully controlled expression. Something that looked dangerously like hope. Clayton returned with blankets and coffee, his movements efficient and unbothered, as if harboring fugitives in the middle of the night was just another Tuesday. He draped a heavy quilt over Mario's shoulders and handed me a steaming mug without a word. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once, his weathered face unreadable. I'll keep watch. You two get warm. He moved to the window, positioning himself where he could see the tree line, and I understood without him saying it. Clayton knew danger when he saw it, and he knew when not to ask questions. Mario sat beside me on the couch, so close our shoulders almost touched. Chanso slept peacefully in my arms now, his tiny face relaxed, innocent, unaware of the chaos surrounding his short life. He trusts you, Mario said quietly, watching his son. Babies sense safety, I replied. He knows he's protected. Mario's jaw tightened. I've spent my entire life building walls, creating distance, making sure no one could ever see weakness in me. He paused, his voice dropping. But the moment he was born, he trailed off. But I understood. Fatherhood changes people, I said softly. It destroyed me. His confession came out raw, unfiltered, in the best and worst way possible. I looked at him and realized I'd spent 38 years building an empire on blood and fear. And now I had someone who needed me to be better than that. I shifted Chanso carefully, tucking the blanket tighter around him. So, you tried to leave. I tried to disappear, Mario corrected. Take my son somewhere far away, where the Barella name meant nothing. Where he could grow up without learning what his father had done. But your brother found out? Mario's expression hardened. Angelo has eyes everywhere. The moment I took Chanso from the compound, he knew, and he moved fast, faster than I expected. The fire crackled. Outside wind howled through the pines. I haven't felt safe in years, Mario said suddenly, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Not since I was old enough to understand what my family really was. Safety isn't something men like me get to have. He turned to look at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes made my breath catch. Until tonight, he continued. Until you opened your door and didn't slam it in my face. Until you refused to let me face this alone. He exhaled slowly. For the first time in decades, Florentina, I felt like maybe I wasn't beyond saving. My throat tightened. The mug trembled slightly in my hands. You're not, I whispered. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you ran with your son instead of letting your brother take him. Because you chose love over power. I met his gaze. That's not a man beyond saving. That's a man worth fighting for. Something passed between us, then electric, undeniable, terrifying in its intensity. I don't want you to walk away, I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. When this is over, whatever happens, I don't want you to disappear. Mario stared at me like I'd just offered him something he'd given up hoping for years ago. Florentina, I know it's insane, I interrupted. I know we just met. I know you're a fugitive and I'm nobody and this whole situation is impossible. But I called them, he said abruptly. I stopped. What? Mario's expression shifted, resolved, determined, but pained. Yesterday, before everything went wrong, I made a choice. My heart started pounding. What kind of choice? He looked down at his sleeping son, then back at me. I contacted federal agents, he said quietly. Made a deal. Full cooperation. Complete testimony against Angelo and the entire Barella syndicate in exchange for witness protection for me and Chanso. The world seemed to tilt. You're turning yourself in? I'm turning my brother in, Mario corrected. And yes, I'll face consequences. But the deal gives Chanso a chance at a real life. A clean slate. A future where he's not defined by what his father built. I should have felt relief. Should have been proud of him for making the right choice. But all I felt was loss. Because turning himself in meant entering witness protection. It meant disappearing into the system. It meant federal custody, depositions, trials that could take years. It meant losing him. When? I asked. My voice barely audible. Mario glanced at the window where Clayton stood watch, then at the clock on the wall showing 1:47 a.m. Dawn, he said. They're meeting me at the highway checkpoint at 6 a.m. Secure transport. Federal marshals. The deal goes into effect the moment I surrender. 4 hours. We had 4 hours left. And then Mario Barella, this impossible, dangerous, broken man who'd knocked on my door on Christmas Eve holding a baby, would be gone. I'm sorry, he whispered, seeing the devastation in my eyes. I looked down at Chanso, sleeping peacefully in my arms, then back at Mario. Don't apologize, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. You're doing the right thing. But inside, something cracked. Because for the first time in years, I'd let myself hope for something more. And now I was going to lose it before it even began. Dawn came too fast. Through Clayton's window, the sky shifted from black to deep purple, then to the pale gray that meant sunrise was minutes away. I'd barely slept, just sat holding Chanso while Mario dozed fitfully beside me, his hand resting protectively on his son even in exhaustion. At 5:47 a.m., headlights cut through the trees. Mario woke instantly, his body tensing with the reflexes of a man who'd spent his life expecting danger. Clayton moved to the window, peering through the curtain. 3 vehicles, he said quietly. Federal plates. Mario stood, straightening his shoulders, and I saw the transformation happen in real time. The vulnerable man who'd confessed his fears to me just hours ago disappeared, replaced by something harder, more controlled. The armor going back on. I stood too, still holding Chanso. The baby stirred, sensing the change in atmosphere. It's time, Mario said, his voice steady. We walked to the door together. Clayton opened it, and the cold morning air rushed in along with the sound of engines idling. 3 black SUVs sat in a semicircle, their headlights creating harsh pools of light in the snow. Men in tactical gear emerged, federal agents, their movements precise and professional. One stepped forward, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Mario Barella? She asked. Yes. I'm Special Agent Reeves. We're here to execute the agreed-upon transport. Her gaze shifted to me, then to the baby in my arms. You must be Florentina Marsh. I nodded, surprised she knew my name. Standard protocol, Reeves explained, as if reading my thoughts. We need to separate you and Mr. Barella for witness safety. You'll travel in Vehicle 2. Mr. Barella and the infant in Vehicle 1. My stomach dropped. Separate? But it's procedure, ma'am. Her tone was firm but not unkind. If there's any attempt at interception, we can't have all parties in one location. Mario's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. I understand. No, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You don't understand. He needs Florentina. Mario's hand touched my arm gently. It's okay, but it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. An agent stepped forward to take Chanso from me. I looked down at the baby one last time, this tiny, innocent life that had stumbled into mine just hours ago, and carefully transferred him into the agent's arms. Then I looked at Mario, his eyes locked onto mine. And for a moment the agents, the vehicles, the entire world fell away. There was only us, only this impossible connection that had formed in the span of one desperate night. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. Mario. But Agent Reeves was already guiding me toward the second SUV. Another agent escorted Mario and Chanso toward the first. The distance between us grew with each step 10 feet, 20, 30. I climbed into the back seat, my hands shaking. Through the tinted window, I could just barely see Mario settling into his vehicle, Chanso secure in his arms. And then, as if feeling my gaze, he turned. Our eyes met through the glass. Slowly, deliberately, Mario pressed his palm flat against the window, my breath caught. Without thinking, I leaned forward and pressed my hand to my own window, mirroring his gesture. The glass was cold, impersonal, but for just a moment, I imagined I could feel the warmth of his hand through it. The engines roared to life. My SUV pulled forward first, beginning the slow journey down the mountain road. I twisted in my seat, watching through the back window as Mario's vehicle followed behind. For a moment, we were together, moving in sync, protected. Then the radio crackled. Command, this is Unit 2. We have a possible tail. Single vehicle, dark van, no plates, approximately half-mile back and closing. My agent's posture changed instantly. Confirmed visual? Affirmative. Vehicle is gaining speed. Agent Reeves's voice cut through the frequency, sharp and commanding. All units, execute separation protocol. Unit 1, take the East Fork. Unit 2, continue north. Unit 3, run interference. Copy that. My driver yanked the wheel hard left, and we veered onto a narrow side road. Through the rear window, I watched in horror as Mario's SUV split right, taking a completely different path. Wait! I shouted. What are you doing? Keeping you safe, ma'am, my driver said, his voice calm despite accelerating. Standard evasion protocol. But Mario, Unit 1 has its own security detail. They'll be fine. I pressed my face to the glass, desperately trying to keep Mario's vehicle in sight. For a few seconds I could still see it, a dark shape moving through the trees, Chanso and Mario inside, safe, protected. And then the road curved. The trees thickened, and Mario's SUV disappeared completely. No, I whispered, my breath fogging the cold window. No, no, no. My driver's radio crackled again, but the transmission was breaking up. Unit 1, experiencing, mechanical, static, then silence. Unit 1, respond, Agent Reeves's voice commanded. Unit 1, confirm status. Nothing. I stared at the empty forest flashing past, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Somewhere behind us, hidden by trees and snow and distance, Mario Barella was alone with his baby and federal agents. And something had just gone terribly, terribly wrong. Mario, something was wrong. I felt it before I saw it, the way you sense a predator in the dark. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My instincts, honed by decades of violence, screamed at me to move. Driver, I said sharply. Speed up. Now. The agent at the wheel glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Sir, we're following standard. The van came from nowhere. It roared out of a concealed side road like a missile, no headlights, pure black metal and malicious intent. I had half a second to register what was happening before it slammed into our passenger side with devastating force. The impact was catastrophic. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. The world tilted violently as our SUV lifted off the ground, airborne for one surreal moment before physics took over. We hit the ground hard, rolled. Once, I wrapped myself around Chanso, my body becoming his shield, absorbing the brutal impact as the vehicle flipped again. Twice. The sound was deafening, crunching metal, shattering glass, Chanso's terrified scream piercing through everything, then stillness. The SUV came to rest on its side, smoke pouring from the engine. Blood ran down my face from somewhere. My ears rang. Everything hurt. But Chanso was crying. Crying meant alive. "Stay down," I gasped at the agent in front, but he didn't respond. His head hung at an unnatural angle. The driver slumped against the deployed airbag, unconscious or worse. Through the shattered windshield, I saw the van reversing. Methodical. Deliberate. Lining up for another hit. A kill shot. "No," I breathed. Adrenaline flooded my system. I fumbled with the car seat straps, my hands shaking, covered in blood, mine or someone else's. I couldn't tell. Chanso screamed, his face red, and I'd never been more grateful for that sound in my life. The van's engine revved. My fingers finally released the buckle. I pulled Chanso against my chest, his tiny body trembling. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you." The van accelerated. I tried the door. Jammed. Kicked it. Nothing. 20 yards. 15. I looked at my son, at his small, perfect face, his terrified eyes, his whole life stretched out before him if I could just. 10 yards. The back window. Already shattered. I could fit through. 5 yards. I lunged backward. Chanso clutched to my chest, forcing my body through the jagged opening. Glass tore at my clothes, my skin. I didn't care. The van hit the SUV again just as I cleared it. The explosion of metal sent me sprawling into the snow, Chanso somehow still secure in my arms. I rolled, protecting him with my body, and came up on my knees. The SUV was completely destroyed. No one inside could have survived that second impact, but we had. Barely. I staggered to my feet, dizzy, bleeding, and ran toward the tree line. Behind me, I heard the van's door open. Footsteps in the snow. "Barella!" a voice called. Angelo's lieutenant. I recognized it. "There's nowhere to run!" I kept moving, crashing through the underbrush. Chanso's cries muffled against my chest. Another voice. "The baby. Boss wants the baby." My blood turned to ice. Florentina. The road stretched endlessly ahead, each mile taking me farther from Mario. My hands pressed against the window, my breath fogging the glass as I stared at the empty forest behind us. Unit 1. Respond. Agent Reeves's voice crackled through the radio again, tight with controlled urgency. Unit 1. Confirm your status immediately. Static. My driver's jaw clenched. He pressed the accelerator harder. "What's happening?" I demanded. "Why aren't they responding?" "Could be a communications issue," he said, but his tone said he didn't believe it. "Go back," I said. "Turn around. We have to." "Ma'am? My orders are to get you to the safe house. That's what I'm doing." "Your orders?" My voice rose. "There's a baby in that car. And Mario is being protected by trained federal agents," he interrupted firmly. "The best thing you can do for them is stay safe." But I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was abandoning them. The radio crackled again. "All units. Unit 1 is not responding. Repeat. Possible incident at grid reference." The transmission cut out. Possible incident. Those two words echoed in my mind, each repetition worse than the last. Possible incident. Incident. My stomach twisted. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, my eyes burning. "Mario," I whispered, my breath fogging the glass. "Where are you?" The trees blurred past. The road curved. The distance between us grew. And somewhere in those dark woods, something terrible was happening. I could feel it in my bones. "Please," I whispered into the silence. "Please be alive." But the forest gave me no answer. Only darkness. Only distance. Only the terrible, crushing certainty that I might never see him again. The safe house was sterile. Cold. Nothing like Clayton's warm lodge or my cabin with its cinnamon smell and crackling fire. Just white walls, fluorescent lights, and the clinical efficiency of federal protection. I hated it immediately. Agent Reeves tried to guide me to a chair. I pulled away. "Where's Mario?" I demanded. "Where's Chanso?" "We're working on establishing contact with Unit 1, she said, her voice professionally calm. Too calm. "Please, Miss Marsh, sit down." "No." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I'm not sitting. I'm not resting. I want answers. Now." Reeves exchanged a glance with another agent. That look, that careful, controlled look told me everything I needed to know. Something had happened. Something bad. Tell me, I said, my voice breaking. Please, just tell me. We lost contact with Unit 1 approximately 23 minutes ago, Reeves admitted finally. A team has been dispatched to their last known location. Lost contact. The words felt hollow. That's it? That's all you're going to tell me? That's all I know right now. Liar. The word escaped before I could stop it. You know more. You always know more. Reeves's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or pity. I couldn't stand either. I turned away, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to hold together the pieces that felt like they were shattering. My mind spiraled between panic and rage, and a grief so profound it felt like drowning. Mario, holding his baby, pressing his hand to the glass. Chanso, warm in my arms, sleeping peacefully. The radio going silent. Miss Marsh, Reeves said quietly. I understand you're upset. Upset? I spun to face her. They have a baby, a newborn, and somewhere out there, they're either hurt or worse. And you're asking me to sit down and wait? There's nothing you can do. Then what good are you? The words hung in the air, brutal and raw. Reeves didn't flinch. We're doing everything we can, but everything wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Snow fell softly over the destroyed SUV, nature already beginning to cover the violence with quiet white. The recovery team arrived with spotlights and tactical precision, their boots crunching through the fresh powder. One agent crouched beside the wreckage, examining the catastrophic damage. Jesus, he muttered. The SUV was obliterated. The second impact had crushed it like a tin can. The agents inside, he didn't need to check. No one survived that. But something was wrong. He circled the vehicle, his flashlight beam sweeping across the snow. That's when he saw it. The back window. Shattered outward, not inward. And in the snow, just beyond the wreckage, a small wool blanket. Dark blue, infant-sized. He picked it up carefully. Fresh blood stained one corner. Commander, he called. We've got something. His team leader approached, and the agent showed him the blanket. The baby was in the car, the agent said. But he's not here now. They spread out, searching. Within minutes, they found the tracks. Boot prints, large, heavy, 2 sets moving deliberately away from the crash site, heading deeper into the forest. But there was a third set, smaller, uneven, staggering, trailing blood. That's Barella, the commander said grimly. He made it out. Barely, another agent added, kneeling beside a particularly large bloodstain in the snow. He's hurt. Bad. They followed the tracks for 100 yards. Then the pattern changed. Signs of a struggle, disturbed snow, more blood, and then the tracks split. The 2 heavy boot prints continued east, purposeful and steady. The smaller, bleeding prints stopped completely. Where's Barella? Someone asked. No one answered. Because Mario's trail ended in a pool of blood-stained snow and nothing else. The commander's radio crackled. Sir, we found vehicle tracks half a mile north. Recent. Looks like a pickup or van. He looked at the blanket in his hand. The blood. The footprints leading away. Call it in, he said quietly. The baby's been taken. Safe house hours later. I sat by the window as dawn broke over the safe house, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale orange. I hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Agent Reeves entered quietly, her expression grave. I stood immediately. Tell me. She took a breath. We found Unit 1. There was an ambush. The vehicle was destroyed. The agents didn't survive. My legs nearly gave out. And Mario? Chanso? Mario Barella's trail was found at the scene. There was significant blood loss. His current status is unknown. Unknown? The word gutted me. And the baby? I whispered. Reeves's face tightened. Evidence suggests the infant was taken from the scene. We believe Angelo Barella has him. The room tilted. Angelo had Chanso. And Mario. I couldn't finish the thought. I'm sorry, Reeves said softly. But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry wouldn't bring them back. I turned to the window, my reflection staring back at me pale. Exhausted. Devastated. But beneath the grief, something else burned. Determination. Rage. Purpose. I pressed my palm flat against the cold glass, remembering Mario's hand on the other side, remembering his eyes, his voice, his desperate hope. "I'm coming for you," I whispered, my breath fogging the window. "Both of you." My jaw set, my hands steadied. Angelo Barella had taken everything from Mario. Now he'd taken them from me, and I was going to get them back. Or die trying. If you want to see what Florentina does next and how far she'll go to bring Mario and the baby home, like, comment, and hit subscribe for part 2.